Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Mind and Money Strategy Seminar stage, Mr. David Shermer.
Good morning. How are we this morning? Someone said fantastic. That's okay. You can have fantastic. Okay, well today is a huge day. We've got a lot of amazing information for you. As Herbie said, we've got Dr. John DeMartini just before lunch, and John has some... who's heard John before? Okay, a few of you. And for those that you haven't, you're in for a great treat. We were very fortunate that John was actually here in Melbourne running a seminar the same weekend as this is on. So we invited him along. So that was amazing. I want to share a little story with you that's a couple of stories on how amazing this information is and how it works. Because, you know, we can hear this information over and over and over and over again. And sometimes it takes years to go the last couple of millimetres in our head. And it's all around belief, whether we believe it does or believe it doesn't. As Troward said, if you think thought is powerful, it is powerful. And so we got home last night, and we had a nanny there, and this is someone we hadn't used before. Lorna rang up an agency that she'd used, and I got home before Lorna, and she was sitting at the table waiting for Lorna to come home, and I just said hi and walked through and did what I was doing, and saw the little boys, and then I come back out, and I said, "Hi, how are you going? I'm David." And she said, "I'm Susie." She said, "I'm really interested in what you're doing." And I said, "Oh yeah." And I didn't take a lot of notice of that. I was in my own space, and she said, "I've done a couple of Chris Howard's NLP programs." Well, all of a sudden that pricked my ears up. And now you've got to understand, this is just a nanny service. This girl could have been from anywhere around Melbourne, and she was in our home. And I said, "Oh yeah." I said, "What else have you done?" She said, and she starts to talk about it. And anyway, I sit down at the table, and she says, "Have you ever seen What the Bleep?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I saw it too." She said, "But all my friends, they're telling me I've got to see The Secret. There's this secret out there, and I haven't been able to get hold of it yet." Anyway, I'm just sitting there smiling, and she's going on, and she says, "I've got this great book." She said, I've just so clicked with it." And she pulls the book out, and it's Ask and It Shall Be Given by Esther Hicks. And she talked on for a while, and I said, "You know that secret thing?" I said, "That was made here in Melbourne." "Was it?" She said, I said, "Yeah," and I said, "I think I'm on it." Well, there was an interesting discussion from that point onwards, and she walked out of our home with a copy, and she was just on cloud nine. So isn't it amazing that person was attracted to us as a nanny? So quite amazing. This morning I want to share with you something called self-sabotage, and what it is and how never, ever, ever to do it again. Does anyone find themselves that they've self-sabotaged their success? Oh, well, this is a bigger job than I thought. Herbie was up here before, and I met Herbie a couple of years ago. Herbie come through another friend or a student that come to our seminars, and he turned up at a stock market workshop. And anyway, he rang me up one day, and he said, "Can I have dinner with you? Can I have lunch with you?" I said, "Sure. I'm up for a coffee anytime." And so Herbie rocks out to our office, and we go off for lunch. Now I didn't realise that Herbie was absolutely scared witless. You know, this was something he'd been told he should do: take a successful person out to lunch. And and Herbie was like a trembling kid. And Anyway, he goes through some little challenges, and I said, that's pretty easy. We can fix that up in about 10 minutes. And that's really how Herbie came along into our lives and into our business. And then he plucked up the courage. He said, I'm really scared. He said, I don't know how to ask this. He said, but can I be your coach? And I said, why not? I said, you got skills. And Herbie, by the way, he really keeps people accountable. You want to know what a coach does? A coach will pat you on the back when you need a pat on the back and kick you up the backside when you need a kick up the backside. A coach keeps you accountable for what you say you're going to do, and your paradigms prevent you from doing it. And when we talk about sabotage or self-sabotage, what we're talking about is simply living out your self-image. Living out your self-image. So I've popped in your books there a little bit about sabotage, and we're going to go through and talk about this so you have a much better understanding really what it is, and once you understand what it is, how to change that so it doesn't happen. I looked up in the dictionary, and looking for the word self-sabotage, couldn't find it. Found the two words, self, which is one's own person, the ego, and sabotage, which is interesting. Sabotage is destruction of property. This is on page 20. Destruction of property or obstruction of normal operations as by civilians or enemies, agents in time of war. Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you do that to yourself? Why would you purposely obstruct what you're doing? It goes on to say that sabotage is a deliberate and secretive action aimed at weakening an enemy, oppressor, or employer through subversion, obstruction, disruption, or even destruction. Wow. And so we do this to ourselves. Interesting, isn't it? What we're talking about here is our self-image, the image we hold of ourselves. And I want to give you a simple explanation of what this is and how it happens, and as we go through the weekend, why and how not to do it. Before I do this, I'll share a story with you. I was sharing with Carl just last night a story of a friend of ours, and this friend, we got to meet when I first started the manufacturing business. We had a complex. It was in an industrial estate, a little place called Toowoomba, and we were the second factory on this estate. And just down the road was another factory, and I didn't know who they were. And anyway, one day I looked out of my office window, and there was 5 Rolls Royces drive up this industrial court. Now, to see 1 Rolls Royce in Toowoomba is a miracle. To see 5 was just incredible. And so I thought, well, I've got to go find out who lives down there. And this was some clients coming to visit this old factory, and went down there and met this guy, and his name is David Boucher. David makes the finest furniture in the world. He makes furniture that's delivered for kings and queens and wealthy people all around the world. And you could buy an ordinary dining room table for about $150,000. You could buy a sideboard for a couple $100,000. And Laura and I were in his little factory one day in his showroom, and he had this cabinet there, and it was like a music box, and you opened it up, and it was a full 3D Taj Mahal, and it was a jewellery cabinet, and this jewellery cabinet was about $1 million. Well, we moved to Melbourne and we lost touch with David and Margaret for a while. And then one day I got a call from him. He'd been receiving our marketing and our emails and so on. He said, "I'd like to chat with you." And he wanted to understand the stock market. What had actually happened, he'd been through a series of experiences of which he lost his entire business for the second time. And he'd actually built this piece for a client in the US. It was this beautiful music box, had 240 diamonds in it, and it was for this guy's daughter's 21st birthday. It was worth $2 million. Took them over a year to build, and they packed it up properly with all shock absorbers in the base and so on, and put it on an airline and shipped it over to the US. And David went over there to personally deliver it and opened up the packaging. It all looked perfectly, but what he didn't realise is the airline company had dropped it 16 feet. And the whole movement on it compacted it down. This was a $2 million piece, and the birthday was 2 weeks' time. So, of course, they didn't want it, and to cut a long story short, this had repercussions all the way through the business, and all of a sudden he found he had no business. The bank come and repossessed everything he had because of an airline company dropping this thing. And when I sat down with David, I said, there's some things you need to understand about business. I said, this is the second time this has happened. I said, there's a pattern going on here. It sounds to me like you're actually sabotaging your success. I said, what do you really want? He said, he said, I think I'm nearly past it. That really was my dream, and we're comfortable now. We've got $100,000 a year coming in. We're building another business, but we're just comfortable. I said, what is it you really want? He said, I like my business back. He said, I'd really like to have the business and not have to worry about the money side, just have the business flowing. I said, well, why don't you? He said, well, it cost me, because what happened when it went into liquidation, a couple of his clients bought the business, and then he consulted to them. He said, I'd like to buy my business back. And he said, well, what would it take? He said, it would take about $1.3 million. I said, well, why don't you? He said, well, I don't have $1.3 million. He said, they're paying me $100,000 a year just to consult them for a couple of days a week. He said, I don't have $1.3 million. I said, so what's the problem? He said, well, you don't understand, I don't have the money. I said, no, what's the problem? I said, not having the money is not the problem. I said, money's easy to find. Anyway, I lent him the program, the recording of Born Rich, we called the Aussie Born Rich, that we did here a couple of years ago. Who's listened to that? Who's got it? Good. He listened to the program, and I want everyone who does not have a Born Rich program to really hear this. He listened to the program, and he listened to it over and over and over again, and he followed the steps. 6 months later, he rang up Laura and I. He said, you never believe what's happened. He said, a miracle's happened. I said, oh, okay. We expect those every day. He said, I've just bought my business back. I said, that was your goal, wasn't it? He said, yeah, but you don't understand. I didn't have the money. I said, I know. He said, do you want to know what happened? I said, yeah, I'd love to. He said, what happened is, he said, a client come along, someone I'd never met before, to place an order for some furniture. And they placed an order for $1 million, a piece of furniture. And he said to me, he said, how much will you get out of this? He said, oh, just my normal wages. He says, you mean to say you won't get, if I place a $3 million order, you won't get any more? He said, no. He said, I don't own the business anymore. He said, well, I happen to know you were bullied by the banks. See, what I didn't tell you is the bank manager had a little agreement with someone over in Russia, and they got this piece of furniture, they remade it and sold it for 3.2 after they gave him $80,000 for it. That doesn't happen in Australia, though. And anyway, he said, this client come along and he said, you've been bullied. And he said, I don't like bullies. He said, would you like to buy your business back? Totally out of the blue. 6 months. He said, all I did is I got your program and I said, I listened to it every day and I followed it step by step by step. And the conversation went on. He said, if you'd like to buy your business back, I'd like to help you. He said, oh, okay. He said, no, I'd really like to help you. He said, how much would it cost? He said, about $1.3 million. He said, we'll put an offer in for it. He said, well, I haven't got the money. He said, well, I'll help you. He said, what do you mean? He said, I'll give you the money. You mean you'll own the business? No, he said, I'll give you the money. And he sat there and he wrote out a check for $1.3 million with no interest in the business and said, here you are, buy your business back. And he bought his business back. I tell you that because it's an example of this information really works. If you think that money is something that's hard to come by, it's not, it's a mindset. David bought his business back. The guy actually increased his order to $3 million. And then he said, listen, I've got a home in Paris. He's got homes all around the world. What David didn't realise, this guy is one of the richest men in Australia, unknown to most people. And he said, I've built a new home in Paris. It's on about 20 acres just outside of Paris. It's only 5 years old. Huge home, a couple hundred squares, and they have 20 servants there all year round. And this guy just goes there a couple of months of the year and does some business in Europe. And so he said, look, listen, I only go there a couple of times a year. I'm not there for the next few months. He said, would you, he said, I really need to have some furniture put in that place as well. He said, would you like to go over? And he said, if you like, take some time, stay there. All the servants are there. Everything's there that you need. Don't have to do a thing. One of David's other goals that I forgot to tell you, that he flies first class everywhere he goes. Now, up until that point, he'd only flown cattle class. So he agreed to him and his wife to go over to Paris and spend a couple of weeks there checking out the house, and then arrived in the mail 2 first-class tickets to Paris. This is all in a space of a little over 6 months from when he had essentially given up hope until he had everything back plus more. I know this works. It was interesting. I was talking to Bob on the phone a few months ago. We just moved into our new home, and I said to Bob, because I wrote down exactly a picture of our new home in a goal achiever workshop I did with Bob in 2002. And I'd put that book away and forgotten about it, and then it wasn't until we'd actually walked in and was in our new home. We'd moved in, and I pulled out the book, and there it was, word for word. I'm so happy and grateful now that I drive up to the gate in my brand new M5 BMW. At that point, M5 BMWs didn't exist. A brand new M5 BMW. I press the button on the remote control, and the black wrought iron gates swing open, and I drive up the paved driveway. And as I drive up, I press another button, and the roller door opens of a 6-car garage, and I drive in. And it was amazing. I said to Bob, I said, you know what? I said, this stuff, I think this stuff works. He says, maybe it does. That's not bad, is it? This stuff works. Don't doubt it. Some of you, your old conditioning or your current conditioning is stopping you, not allowing you to actually accept the information actually works. You spend so much time trying to figure out how it's going to happen rather than what it is you really want. Forget about the how. Forget about the how, because the how will come. That's what's actually amazing. And so Bob put this stick figure up yesterday. And he said very simply, let this represent the mind and this the body. And he said what happens is we get ideas, and it might be an idea or whatever it is, and this idea comes into our conscious mind, and our conscious mind is the part of us that thinks. So we take this information and we think about it. We will compare this information with what we currently think is the truth. Just talking to someone during last night after this finished here. They were saying, I just find it so hard to think about what I want because I've got all these problems. Wallace T. Wattle said in his book, the hardest activity for a human being is to think the truth regardless of the appearances. To think the truth regardless of the appearances. The appearances is your present result right now. The appearances you result in money. Your appearances result in relationships. Whatever it is, that's the appearances. That is a confluence of your thinking up until this point about that. And as Bob said yesterday, many of those thoughts, or many of those paradigms, those pictures you never even chose. And so we think about this, and if it's different to our current beliefs about money, so often we'll reject it. But we take this information, and if we think about this over and over and over and over again, what will happen is we'll replace this idea in here with a new idea. So we could be absolutely broke, have no concept of money or where it's going to come from. We mightn't have an education, we mightn't have the skill, the ability, or the finances right now to pursue our ideal. What's an ideal? An idea you fall in love with. So you got this idea and you have no idea how it's going to happen, yet the amazing thing is you take this information and you replace the current pictures within your subconscious mind, and like magic, it changes the result. Because whatever the subconscious mind is our feeling, this is where feelings happen, which causes us to act, that creates the result. So we think, we feel, we act, we create the result. By law that happens. There is a science to getting rich. And so this result will always be a direct reflection of the pictures we hold in our subconscious mind. Always. Now, what we do is we get an idea or we think about something, wow, I'd like that. And so what we're trained to do is we work harder. We go and take on another job. We go and do some more overtime. But we work harder. We think that harder work is going to change the result. And so we work harder here and our result starts to change. We put more action in, our result starts to change. Now, some people call this willpower. I'm going to suggest right up front, that is the incorrect use of will. What is the purpose of will? The purpose of will is to help you or to cause you to remain focused on your goal regardless of your result. Continue to be focused on the truth regardless of the result. So your result could be that you've been to the doctor and you've got some bad news. That could be your result. Now, that's just a signal to say that you've had some thinking up to this point that has caused that. But it doesn't have to be like that. The truth is, you're a healthy and abundant human being. The truth with money is there is as much as you want, plus more. From abundance, he took abundance, and still abundance remained. We're often told or schooled, brought up with the concept there is only so much to go round. And yet, the world gets more and more abundant. If you look at money today, there is much more money in the world today than there was 50 years ago. Where did it come from? The ether. I don't know. It just came, didn't it? And there's still more. And so what happens is we start to work more, we create more action, and our results start to change. But guess what? We cannot outperform our self-image for long. We cannot outperform the image we have of ourselves. You might want $1 million. Think, wow, yeah, let's go, and we create this $1 million. And you go out there and you work hard and you look for new business, you take on more jobs, but you don't change your current paradigms about money. The only thing that can happen is you put all this work in, you use willpower to force the action to create a result. And what happens when you stop using willpower? What happens when you stop applying the force to create the result? So automatically you will come back to exactly the same point you were before. And so your result will come back to that point. Let me give you another example. Take a person earning X amount of dollars. Let's say a person's earning $60,000 a year. You take this person and you give them some skills, you give them some ideas, like right here. Now, I want to say that you need to make your goal scary. You need to make your goal really big. For example, if you're currently earning $60,000 and you say, wouldn't it be nice if I had $70,000? And your subconscious mind says, oh, that's pretty boring. An extra 10 grand. And you're thinking, oh, I could do this and I could do that. Why not make it $700,000? See, the subconscious mind, this is the important thing to understand. The subconscious mind does not understand or does not have a concept of quantity or time. It doesn't know what's big or small. When I first started using these principles, I thought I'd test them out. And for me, that was actually, I was just sharing this with someone yesterday. I thought it was first a car, but there was actually something before that. I wanted to be able to carry around with me $1,000 in notes in my pocket. I didn't have $1,000 in the bank, but I knew if I could carry around $1,000 in my pocket, I'd be different. I would feel different. I wouldn't be going in the shop thinking, I can't afford that, I don't have the money. I would go in the shop saying, well, I've got the money, I choose not to have it. My first goal when I went through this material was to get $1,000 in notes. And I went to the bank one day and I drew out every cent. After I'd saved it up, we drew out every cent, and I got 10 $100 notes and put them in a money clip and carried them around with me. Now understand, when this happened, I was still on the dole. And so that was my first goal. The next one was the car. I didn't understand, really. I'd heard people say that the subconscious mind doesn't understand the difference between what's real and what's imagined, big or small. I thought, to me, a car was big. I just want to encourage you to make it as big as possible, because wouldn't it be disappointed if you went for 70 grand and got it, and then realised you could have had 700 with exactly the same effort? So a person's on $60,000. They start to learn new information. They learn new information, so intellectually they understand something different, but they don't change the pictures in their subconscious mind. So what happens is their income level goes up like this. They might even hit $100,000 a year, be right on target to hit that. But their image or their understanding who they are around money is still at $60,000 a year. What is the only thing that can happen? They will unconsciously make choices causing themselves to come back to that point. In fact, Maxwell Maltz said, we act, believe and feel according to what we consider our self-image to be, and we do not deviate from this pattern. Our self-image is an amazing part of us. It causes us to stay true to us, true to our image. Yet it's also the thing that causes us to not perform to how we'd like to perform. and we have to understand how to use it. So our self-image will bring us right back. In fact, we'll probably underperform and come back on target. You've got a picture in your book there of a ship, my ship here, with a missile launcher on the front. And there's a target there. And I draw this because this is a classic example of what our self-image is. If we take a straight line from the ship and fire the missile towards the target, we know that it remains on track 100% of the time, don't we? No, it doesn't. But what's the chances of it hitting spot on target? Probably 100%, unless something kills it beforehand. When the missile is fired off, what happens, it's fired off and it has a mechanism that measures a deviation from the target. And the wind might start to blow and it blows it off target. The mechanism picks up the deviation, just like your self-image. If your programming is $60,000 a year and you start to move off target, over or under, the mechanism picks it up and says, uh-oh, we better correct this. And you will make decisions that you don't even understand why you made them. Because you look back at the times you've self-sabotaged, do you understand why you did it? You say, that's dumb. Well, it is. But it's your self-image correcting you back, bringing you back on track. And so a little missile fires off, or a little fin changes, and it brings this missile back on course. Trouble is, it overshoots. They say that a missile, from the time it's fired to the time it hits the target, is only on track 3% of the time. See, sometimes you get off track and you get despondent. This is never going to happen. I'm not meant to get this, or God never meant me to have this. Rubbish. You're just slightly off target to your self-image, and it'll bring you back on if you just hold fast to the goal. And it comes backwards and forwards until finally, bang, smack on the goal, smack on target. So what do you have to change if you want to change the result? The target, the self-image. You have to spend most of your work on changing what it is you want, or what's programmed in your self-image. And so we go back to this stick person, and what we do understand is there are pictures built up here in our subconscious mind. Remember, the subconscious mind cannot reject. We can't say, I don't want, because it's just in there. What happens when we think of an idea over and over and over again with constant repetition, that idea becomes embedded in our subconscious mind. Any other idea contrary to that is replaced. Becomes embedded in our subconscious mind. How come that David Boucher attracted to him $1.3 million? Had no idea how it was going to happen in 6 months. Now some of you are saying, well, it's all right for him. How would that happen for me? Forget about the how. Your job is to create an image of what it is you want. And so you create this image by focusing on getting very specific and clear about what it is you want. This is the process that Bob went through last night. What is it you want? I said when I first came up here yesterday that most people don't have no idea what it is they want. And that's true. Did you have a challenge of writing down exactly what it is you wanted? The thing is, we all know. You just got to get connected with what is it? What is it you want? And once you know what it is you want, get very specific about that. Get very specific about what it is you want. And then focus on that and build that picture with all the emotion that you can. Get connected with that. Live as if it has already happened. And so you get connected with that and you think about it over and over and over and over and over again. And you replace this picture in here. The more you think about it, the more emotion you get about it, you replace the picture in here. Once you replace that, your actions will automatically change. See, self-sabotage is you doing actions that are actually opposing to your current self-image of what that is, or what your result is. And so if we want a different result, we can't use our will or our willpower to do more action. It will be self-defeating. What we have to do is we have to use our will to focus on our new goal, regardless of appearances, regardless of what's happening right now. Create the image, build the image as strong and as big and in the now, right now, and over again replace it or think about it until it replaces, and like magic, the result will happen here. And it happens fast. It happens real fast sometimes. What we normally do is we act and we create a result, but we keep looking back at our current result and we feed our current result in there. My example, best example, is looking at bills and thinking about bills. Anyone here who doesn't have money, who's broke, listen to this. The longer you focus on how much you haven't got, the longer you'll have what you've currently got. The longer you focus on what you haven't got, the longer you'll have what you've currently got. See, if you focus on the bills that are coming in every week, if you focus on not having money, I used to go down to the teller, down to the flexi teller every day, the hole in the wall, and check out how much money we didn't have. I did. It used to be a daily activity. And every day, I fulfilled my self-image. There was nothing there. I'd go up a few dollars and down a few dollars and up a few dollars and down a few dollars. Didn't change much. And every day, in the mail would come the bills, more, but so much that I got overwhelmed where I knew the look of one of these things. And they'd come in the mail and straight in the bin. I didn't even open them because they got nasty. They would say awful things about me. And I didn't like that, so I just put them straight in the bin. Not my problem. Did that for about 3 years. And some of them wrote me letters with red writing on. And then they'd sign them personally. You know you got their attention then. Pulled up at a fuel station one day and pulled my credit card out to pay for the fuel. I had a credit card then. I pulled my credit card out to pay for the fuel and they said, "Sorry, Mr. Sherman, we need to keep your credit card." I said, "Why is that?" "Well, we don't know, but the bank says that they want it more than you do." I had a big bill on my credit card, hadn't paid for it for months. Didn't think I could. And then I realised it wasn't really my problem. I had their money. But I kept on focusing on what I didn't have. I kept on focusing on the bills that were coming in, on how much money I didn't have in the bank. And the way I overcome that, what I learnt is I had to focus on the truth, not the appearances. Was I working hard at the time? You bet. You asked Lorna. I was out there every day. I was working from the morning and I'd leave home and I wouldn't come back sometimes till 11 or 12 at night, every night, 6 days a week. I was working hard. I was doing the do. But nothing was changing. In fact, things were getting worse because I was focused on the bills. So I got the bills in and when they come in, and I decided to open them. I was surprised what some of them said when I opened them. And I opened the bills and I wrote, "paid in full." Now, were they paid in full? No. But I knew I had to trick my subconscious mind because I had a pretty good picture in there of being broke. And everything I was trying to do, I was self-sabotaging, or I was creating actions that literally destroyed any effort I was putting in. So every time I'd build up a business, bang, down it would go. Every time I got some money, something would happen and it'd be gone. And when you truly understand this, you realize the place that you've got to put the work in is in changing your self-image. Because that changes everything else. And so I got the bills and paid in full and put them up on the refrigerator. I got the bank statements and I whited out, the little bit was there. I actually whited out the decimal point and I moved it a long way to the right. And I also went through and I created a budget of exactly how I wanted to live. And I'll talk about that later. I want to take you through that exercise because I believe that's one of the most powerful things you can do is create a budget of how you want to live. I was walking around talking to some people last night in the SNAP process. And people said, well, I want $1 million, I want $2 million, I don't really know how much I want. We're going to get really specific about that. I want to take you through an exercise to get very specific about how much money is it that you really want. What is it that you need to have to live the sort of life you want to live? Achieve the things you want to achieve, do the things you want to do, and have the lifestyle that you've always dreamed of. Exactly how much would that cost? Now, if I asked for a show of hands, I guarantee I wouldn't get many that know exactly, down to the last few dollars, on how much their life will cost them. Because what that process does as we go through that, rather than living our current lifestyle, because it's very easy to look around what you currently have, isn't it? You can see references all the time of how much money you have, of what your self-image is. You can look at the car you drive, the house you live in, what you do to earn income. That will all reinforce exactly how much money you have. You try to exceed that and it brings you back down to the point. The harder thing to do is to actually look at your life on how you want it to be. And that's why Wallace D. Wattles said the hardest activity for a human being is to look at or to see the truth regardless of appearances. And so, as I said before, we take this result and we feed it back in here and reinforce our current picture. That gives us our current result, that gives us our current picture, that gives us... And people live all their lives like that. Oh, they'll make a few dollars increase in their pay. They might even go on strike to get another $10 in their pay packet. I think that's quite hilarious. Because it doesn't change the end result. Because their self-image is the same. You've got to stop that right now. Stop looking in the rear vision mirror. Stop sabotaging your success. Spend time on creating the new image. The image or the life that you want to live. And I can guarantee, as sure as the sun will go down tonight, that if you don't do that, your result will remain the same. You will get exactly the same result 1 year from now as you've got now if you spend no time changing the self-image or little time changing your self-image. I was talking to someone just yesterday, and I said, you don't understand. I've got this and this and this and this, and I got no money, and I'm old, and I said, I understand. I said, it doesn't matter how old you are right now, how little money you have, what education or skill, how good you look. Isn't that a good part? It doesn't matter how you look. Some of us are pretty thankful for that one. Doesn't matter of any of those things. Because once you change the image you have of yourself, your results will change. It's like night and day. Once you change the image, you fall in love with a new idea. That's an ideal. You get a new goal, a new image, whatever it is, and you get emotionally connected with that. And self-sabotage will be gone forever. Self-sabotage is just a fancy word for saying you're living out your self-image. You are actually being brought back to who you are, which is a good thing. The bad thing is you're not actually creating a greater image. And so you're still getting the same result. So what happens is we create a new image, we implant that image over and over and over again in our subconscious mind. It replaces the pictures that are in there, a brand new picture, and we have to act. By law, we have to act differently. We feel different. When you think about your goal, when you get emotionally attached to that, regardless of what it is, how much money it is, but if you get emotionally attached to that, by the way, the bigger the goal, the more emotionally attached you can get to it. You don't get too excited about getting a $10,000 a year pay rise, but you get very excited if your yearly income suddenly became your monthly income, wouldn't you? Or why stop there if your annual income become your daily income? Would that excite you? Not sure, that wasn't very passionate. Would it excite you? Good. For a while I thought I was in the wrong room. And so you build the image here and you replace it and you feel differently, and because you feel differently, you act differently. See, the majority of your actions are habitual. You do them without conscious thinking or without consciously contemplating on that action. You'll make a decision about money today, yesterday, day before, tomorrow, without actually really thinking of the consequences of it, because you have references about money that cause you to make that image and will keep you right on track. See, the results or the statistics say that 95% of everyone who wins lotto or wins a large amount of money, what happens? They're worse off within 5 years than they were before they won the money. Why is that? Their self-image kicks in. They're not worth that amount of money. They're worth whatever they were before they won it. So their self-image kicks in and says, okay, let's find how we can distribute this to someone else. Let's find all the rogues to give this money to. And so kicks in and they create the result of what it is they want. But once you replace that, once you spend the time, the effort, and how much time will this take? Who cares? Who cares? We say you should spend at least half an hour morning and night, at least half an hour morning and night changing the self-image. Now, is that pretty easy to do? Is it easy not to do? Yes. You need to make a commitment to yourself right now that you will do that. You will do whatever you need to do. Shift everything else out of your diary. It doesn't matter what you have on. Move it aside, because it is so important that the rest of your life depends on it. The rest of your life. As I said before, some of you spend so much time thinking about the how is it going to happen. Forget about the how. Do you think that David Boucher could have, when he first started, had any concept how $1.3 million was going to come to him? Had no idea. He would have loved to have been here this weekend, but he had his mother-in-law was dying and he couldn't be. But he just took this information and followed it step by step by step. Great thing is he still makes the most exquisite furniture in the world. And we have right now a dining room suite manifesting in our dining room. There's a space for it. There's a space for it. And I'm just amazed at what he does. Like the talent of this guy around furniture is absolutely incredible, and it's just amazing. Until you see a piece, it's hard to comprehend the things he does. But you can have whatever it is you want. You can have whatever it is you want. You just got to build the picture and believe. And simply take the steps to focus on it every day and get emotionally involved with it. Some people say, well, I can't visualize it, I can't see the image. Who cares? Just get emotionally connected with it. Just pretend. Go back to being a kid, pretend. And the more you do that, you change this picture in here until one day you wake up and it's like dreaming. Your result is totally different. Your results are totally different. If it's about money, you'll have more money than you even thought about before. Money starts to come in from sources that you never even thought were possible. You're here right now because of a self-image. You're here right now. This event was actually planned 12 years ago. This was planned 12 years ago. This was something that it was a dream that when I listened to Bob's material that I wanted to do. In fact, the story is a bit longer than that, when I first got this information, I looked at the phone number on the back. I got so excited, I thought, I'd love to teach people this information. And I rang up the number on the back of the Born Rich program, and a guy called David Walsh answered the phone. I said, I'd like to share this information with people. And David said he wasn't really, I don't think, living the material. He said, we're not really doing that anymore. He said, I've tried to do that, and it's not working. And this was 12 years ago. And he said, but I'd like to sell the business. I said, fantastic. I said, how much do you want for it? He said, $100,000. I said, great. And put the phone down, because I never had $100. When I first went through this program, I never had $100. I had to borrow money for a cup of coffee. But I set a goal that if ever I got the opportunity, I would teach this. Not only teach it, but actually own the license and make it a household name around Australia. And time went on, and that goal just sat there, was written down, and went back to it every now and again. And then in 2003, the opportunity came up. 2003, the opportunity came up, and we're sitting in a conference just like this, and the owner of the license then said, we're just selling all our assets, and we're moving to the Sanctuary Cove in the Gold Coast, and if you know anyone who wants to take on this business, let us know. I was in the room. And we said, I went up and said, I'm here. Time's right. Wasn't right before that. And we took on the business. And we sat down and we set a goal that by 2006, that Life Success would be a household name across Australia. Thank you. And we had an image, we had a picture of having Bob here, bringing Bob back, and sharing Bob with people across Australia. We also had an image of how it would be a household name. Had no idea how it would happen. And one day I got a call from Glenda and Rhonda Burns. The secret is now making this a household name, not just around Australia, but around the world. Now, Bob claims that it was his image that did that. So without trying to argue with Bob, bring you right back to this. Saying your result will only ever be the pictures you hold in your image. The pictures you have in your subconscious mind.
For other great life-changing products, or to receive a free copy of our newsletter, The Secret to Wealth, Mind and Money Strategies, go to www.mindandmoney.tv. www.mindandmoney.tv.